Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for being here. I'm really excited. My name, as Satola mentioned, is Jared Thatcher, and I am going to be talking to you a little bit today about facilitating powerful Kaizen improvement events. So let's go ahead and get on with it. So a little bit about me. As Satola mentioned, I am the CPI program manager, or continuous process improvement program manager at the Port of Seattle. But I really started off my career in construction. So when I was 12, I started working at my dad's steel fabricating business, which for a 12-year-old was kind of fun because I got to operate a forklift and drive cranes and do things like that when I was really young. I also learned swear words. I didn't even know were swear words before I started working there because of the iron workers. But for about 20 years, I worked in construction, and I decided that I really wanted to move into the business world and change. And so in order to do that, I ended up going to the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and I got my MBA there. So my first job after graduating was at Daimler Trucks North America. So, you know, Daimler with Mercedes-Benz, and had a lot of great experiences there, including that's really where I started using lean officially and full-time. Worked with McKinsey Consulting to go ahead and roll lean out into the indirect or the office side of the business. And one of the other cool things that I got to do there was I saw a need to go ahead and reach out with a lot of the youth, and there were some programs that I helped set up. And so I worked with the Boy Scouts, I worked with the Girl Scouts, I worked with a whole bunch of other community youth groups and programs to get them to know a little bit more about the industry and about the STEMs. So you'll notice that one post right there with the picture that I just put up. For those of you that are maybe Transformer fans, that happens to be a Galvatron. And that was actually kind of a fun event that I got to take the actual truck that was used in the movie and bring that there. In fact, my kids, my boys, thought that I had the best job ever because they got to ride in that truck. They got to ride in Optimus Prime. They got to do all sorts of really cool things. And they were a little disappointed when a few years later I was recruited by a management consulting company, Slalom, and I started working there because I no longer had those cool things to take them and do. However, I got to work for a lot of really cool companies. You might recognize a couple of these. And I spent most of my time actually at Nike and doing a bunch of different projects, with them, including rolling lean and agile out into their IT department. So that was a lot of fun there. And it was at this time that I went ahead and wrote my book, Parenting the Lean Way. All right. So as fun as management consulting is, I decided that, I really did enjoy kind of that feeling that you have when you work with a company and that you're part of that company versus kind of feeling like the stepchild. So I ended up taking a job at Alaska Airlines and worked there for a couple of years. And that was a great experience. And once again, as far as a dad and as far as a job, I was cool again because, I didn't have the cool trucks that we got to go into, but we did have flight benefits so that we could fly, anywhere we wanted. And so that was kind of cool. And the kids thought that was neat. And as time progressed, there came an opportunity to work at the Port of Seattle. So that was really about 2 blocks down the road from where the corporate headquarters of Alaska Airlines is. And I thought that making that transition into government might actually be a better and safer option, as it had been about a decade since we'd had our last recession, and it kind of seemed like, maybe we're heading for something else. And it was very fortuitous that I did take this job because just over 6 months after I started working, of course, COVID hit. And as a result of COVID, one of the things that I did is I started doing kind of this side project, and that's the Virtual Lean Summit. And so every year I go ahead and I host this event, have some amazing speakers from all over the world go ahead and attend. So if you ever get a chance, that's a free event that I do, and you're welcome to check that out on virtualleansummit.com. All right, so let's talk about the agenda, and I want to give a special thanks to the Global Skills Development Council for this opportunity to speak at the Global Six Sigma Learning Fest for 2021. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about Kaizen events and what they are. We're going to go ahead and then dive into virtual Kaizen events. And finally, we'll finish off with talking about how to be a great facilitator. And then, of course, we'll open that up to questions and answers at that point. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and ask a question. I'm going to pull the chat up here. Is this glass half full or half empty? What is it that you guys see? So we'll take a second, just go ahead and put in the chat. What do you think? And there's no judgment here. You know, if you think it's half empty, that's perfectly fine. You know, maybe a little more pessimistic. If you're a little bit more optimistic, think it's half full. How is it that you guys see that glass? And we're not going to be calling on people. So is it possible to go ahead and type in the comment what you see, half full or half empty, in the chat? There we go, half full. Thank you. Full, half full, half full. Half empty, good. Okay, so a little bit of everything. That's awesome. There we go. All right, thank you guys. I was beginning to wonder if I was still on. All right, so my son jokes, he says, you know, while my wife and I are busy arguing about whether it's half full or half empty, he's gonna go ahead and drink it because he's an opportunist. Let's go ahead and jump back. All right. So somebody that has lean thinking and thinks a little bit different, what they're going to see is that we're probably using the wrong size glass on this. There we go. So we're using the wrong size glass. They're also going to start asking questions. They're going to want to know, well, what is it that we want that for? What temperature do we want it? They're going to ask questions about us because they want to, you know, be able to make sure that we're serviced in the right way. They're going to go ahead and maybe start to wonder, it's like, well, why is it only half full? Is there maybe something wrong with the faucet and it's not working and we have to fix that? They're going to want to know other things too. Like, you know, what are we actually going to use this for? Is it, you know, do we just need a glass of water and we didn't want a lot? Or maybe we're going to use it for another purpose, like, doing watercolors. Or maybe we want it hot, in which case that's the wrong glass and we should probably, use a different type of glass. They're going to ask a bunch of questions. And so really that's what Lean and Lean Six Sigma is all about, is really trying to get into the heart of what is it the customer wants so that we can go ahead and provide that when they want it, how they want it, and be able to service them and give them what it is that they need. So that's really what it is that we're trying to achieve. And so the same thing happens when we get into doing virtual or doing that Kaizen events. And so we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the DMAC approach as well as the PDCA approach to doing that. So when we're doing virtual events, when we use the DMAC approach here, first we're going to define it, right? We're going to go ahead and we're going to put together the team, and the sponsor is going to agree on the scope, the goals, put together a charter, have their performance targets. They're going to really try to narrow in on what is it that we're going to fix. And then, of course, in order to know what that gap is and what it is that we have to do, we have to measure it, right? We have to go ahead and start thoroughly understanding the current state of the process, gather the data, understand the cost, understand the quality and the impacts and ramifications of that. Then we're going to go ahead and start analyzing. So now that we've got the data, we're going to start going in and trying to pinpoint the root causes. We're going to test some of our hypotheses affect the inputs and the outputs of the process. And then we're going to improve, right? We're going to brainstorm those solutions. We're going to verify those root causes. And then we're going to go ahead and learn from those tests and implement the improvements. All right. And finally, we want to control it, right? We want to make sure that it is sustainable. So we want to review and report the results of the improvements. We want to adjust to target the root cause or causes, and then we want to complete the work with documented procedures for maintaining the gains. Now within PDCA, it's very similar actually. It's plan, do, check, act, or sometimes adjust, right? So within the planning phase, it's really kind of the same things that we do in DMAIC with a define, measure, and analyze. We want to identify the abnormalities in the process. We want to scope the areas of improvement efforts and gather the data, which we sometimes refer to as grasp the situation, identify the potential root cause or causes, brainstorm those improvements, and then bridge the gap between the current state and the future state that we're looking to achieve. Then we do it, right? We start, and now that we've got the plan, we're going to go forward. So we implement the improvement countermeasures that we've developed and the planning phase. Next, we want to check those results. So we do a quality and review the results, or quantify and review the results for our improvements. And finally, we want to then adjust the countermeasures to better impact the root cause or causes. And if the results do align, then we standardize, right? Okay. There's a problem though with the PDCA cycle that we see here to the right that a bunch of us use, and that's simply that it doesn't accurately depict what it is we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it in terms of time. Now, it's really easy in PowerPoint and other programs to go ahead and do something that looks like this. It's a little bit more difficult to make it look like this. And I like to add grasp the situation to the center, because all throughout the process of doing the PDCA cycle or using DMAIC, we really want to understand what's going on, how it's impacting everybody, and help us to really be able to see what's going on. Now, a lot of the grasp situation comes about from doing our Gemba walks, doing our go and see walks, and making sure that we're understanding what's really happening. But I like this cycle on the bottom versus the one on the top, because it really does kind of depict how much time we should be spending on the planning phase versus the doing, the checking, and the acting. So with that, let's talk a little bit about planning. So planning really is key. And if I were going to document that and graph that out, it would look a little bit like this. So we have our PDCA cycle, and on the bottom, we have time, how long something takes to do. On the x-axis. On the y-axis, we have two different concepts. Towards the top, we're going to have this traditional planning, which really says, hey, we've got to act, we've got to move, we can't wait, we've just got to get things moving, right? And on the bottom is a little bit more of this idea of strategic planning. We want to take time to think. We really want to understand what it is that we're trying to achieve. And so what you see in traditional planning is we get the assignment and we start going, we start working, right? Boom. And we get halfway through the assignment and we find out, you know what? We're off track a little bit, or we didn't plan for something and we have to do some rework. And so it takes a little bit longer than what we originally thought that it would take, because all of these things that come up, because we didn't take the time initially to figure out what was going to happen, what some of the risks or the scenarios would be that might impact it. Versus if we take more time on the planning, then we can actually see a huge improvement in our time savings. So whenever you're working, if you don't learn anything else from what I'm going to say today, it's really go ahead and take a little extra time every day, every project, to go ahead and plan. Make sure that you kind of think about things that could happen, think about, well, what could we do differently, and use that as your guide. They often say that you end up saving, it's almost a factor of 10. So for every minute you spend planning, it saves you 10 minutes. So what that means is if you spend about 10 to 12 minutes a day, you're actually improving your productivity on a daily basis of 25%, because it's going to save you about 2 hours of work, because you've actually planned out the most important things, you're prioritizing, and you're really getting off to a good start. So I hope you remember this. This is really a big, huge key for productivity. All right, let's get to reality. 2 years ago, 20 some months ago, we had a interesting thing happen, right? COVID. And when that hit, it really did upend our world. In fact, here is a snapshot of my calendar from the week that we ended up going into lockdown. So on Tuesday, we had a big kickoff for this new workshop that we were starting, and super excited because I actually had 2 other Kaizen events that we had planned. One was going to be on Thursday, and this was one that we had planned for about 2 months, just to get everybody, get it on everybody's calendar. We were super excited about this. And then we also had another one that was set up for Friday, which was a follow-up session. So on Wednesday, the 11th, we went into lockdown. And so, okay, I'm getting my home office set up. I took over the dining room table, everything was fine. And I started thinking, okay, well, how am I going to do this event tomorrow? And I put off trying to even think about that. Okay, we're going to have to do it remotely. We can't come into the office. And for half a second, I thought, I can go ahead, share my screen on Teams. I can go ahead and everybody can follow along while in Visio, I'm creating the process map and I'm capturing what everybody's saying. And like I said, it lasted for about a half a second. I'm like, there is no way I'm going to be embarrassed because I'll be typing and I'll misspell something and I'll have to go back and fix it. And it's all of this stuff going on. It's just going to be awkward. It's really going to be kind of a hurry up and wait for Jared to get everything done. And so I canceled it. There was no way that I was going to go ahead host a 3-hour event, and yeah, it just wasn't going to work, right? But that gave a problem. I had another event on Friday. What was I going to do? And so I ended up talking to my colleagues. We started doing some research, and guess what? We actually figured out a solution, and I was able to hold that event. I kind of postponed it for an hour. So we did a 2-hour event instead of a 3-hour event. But guess what? And we were still able, following Parkinson's law, which says that your time is going to expand or contract depending on how much time you have for an event. We actually got everything done that we were planning on getting done in that 3-hour event, and we did it virtually. I'll talk a little bit later about how we ended up doing that. But I did hear an event the other day, and it was, I believe it was Starbucks. And so the continuous process improvement team from Starbucks was talking about how it took them 6 weeks to go ahead and put together a solution, which is pretty much the same one that we came up with, but we did it just a little bit faster. Now, here's a cool thing. So the Port of Seattle, it was founded actually just over 100 years ago in 1911. And it's a government agency. It was created initially to make sure that trade going out of the Seattle area, that it was fair, that there wasn't any one company that had a monopoly, that everybody was treated the same in terms of using the port facilities. So we're a government agency. We operate some port facilities. We operate a bunch of harbors and marinas. We operate the airport at SeaTac International Airport. One cool thing that I always, wish that we could do when I was working at Alaska Airlines or I was working at Daimler is it would be really cool if we could go ahead and talk to other companies, get their information. Hey, we're running into this problem. Have you guys had the same, sort of problem with this machine or with this process? What have you guys done? Of course, you can't do that, right? We have competition and it doesn't really work. Now, on the airline side, there is one exception to that, and that is in terms of safety. So if there's ever a safety event, we do share that information with the other airlines, so that should put your mind at ease that there is that sort of collaboration that does happen between the airlines, but that is only in regard to safety. But as I start working for government, I thought, you know what, we're not in competition with anybody. And so I ended up reaching out, and I found out that the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, they also have a lean department. And so I started working with them, and since then we've worked with a bunch of others. But the cool thing was, they actually went into lockdown about a week and a half after us. So we were able to share the things that we had learned and help them to not miss a beat, not miss any sessions or things that they had planned, and show them how to go ahead and do what we were doing. And since then, we've also gone ahead and we've been featured in my one of my colleagues, Penny Solomon, and myself. We have gone ahead and we've been doing free events through LinkedIn and through other agencies and companies to go ahead and share the learnings that we've had. So I'm excited today to talk to you about what we're doing. And the cool thing is, we have found that doing virtual Kaizen events is so effective that we've actually started to implement hybrid Kaizen events as we've been going back to work. And so we do a little bit of both, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. All right, so let's talk about Kaizen events themselves. So there's some pros and cons, and let's just go through those. So one of the pros is that there's that personal interaction is so much easier in person, right? You can read people's faces, you can see if they're understanding it, if they're getting it. And I really wish we were all together, because I love presenting in person. I love the energy that I get from the room, being able to see that you guys are involved, you're listening. And so that really makes it exciting. Also, being able to hear a few people talking at the same time. You know, in Teams, if there's two people talking at the same time, you can't understand it, right? In Zoom, same sort of thing, where it's a little bit easier when you're in person. Also, you have the ability to have personal conversations with other people and to strengthen, you know, those bonds and ties with each other. It's also easier to have day-long and multi-day sessions when we're in person. And there's also no need to worry about being told that you're on mute, right?